welcome back to this channel. Today I'm going to show you guys how I make one of our favorites, the family's risotto. Now I've made a risotto a couple times before and it was never perfect, and I couldn't really figure it out until I learned that risotto has a trick to it. You have to, at the very end, when you are stirring in the chicken broth, stir the entire time. That is what gives it that creamy, delicious risotto texture that you're looking for. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to get a perfect risotto. So I'm about to mix a whole bunch of ingredients together, and there are certain steps that will make the risotto better, but that is the key. You need to stir at the end until the end. And there's a lot of broth to be stirred into this rice, so let's get into how I make this risotto. Now the rice I'm using today is a very specific rice. You need to buy this rice for risotto. It's called arborio, I think that's how you say it. So it's got a bigger grain than a normal rice grain, so this is a specific kind for risotto, and when you're going to the store you can look for this kind of rice, or I have also successfully used sushi rice. So if you can get your hands on some of that, both of those would work well for risotto, but you'll see the kernel is just a bit bigger, so it's not your standard rice. It's bigger, it's harder, and it'll take a little longer to cook than just your average rice. It's best to rinse the rice before you use it, so I'm measuring how much I need here into a bowl and then just rinsing it with water. You can do this by kind of rinsing the water over it for a little while in the sink, or filling it up and kind of swishing it around with your hand like I'm doing, and then leave it for a little while, maybe 10-20 minutes to soak, and this will just, you'll see, wash off this kind of white stuff that comes out of the water. So you want to wash that all away before you use the rice. Now if you have to skip this step, it's alright, but it is better to wash your rice before you use it. Now while you have your rice soaking, you can still prepare the rest of the steps if you want to. First, I'm going to start by heating up my broth. I'm going to measure out how much broth I need versus the amount of rice that you're going to be making, and start to simmer that on your stovetop. You want that ready so that you're adding hot broth to this rice and it's not totally cool. It needs to come to temperature first while you're trying to stir and make the risotto. So start heating your broth. Now I'm going to use some chicken broth that I made earlier this week. Anytime that we make chicken, I usually pop the bones right into our Instant Pot and make a chicken broth from that and store it in our fridge in these jars, which I use all the time for various things, including this risotto. But if you're going to make a big batch of bone broth or something like that and you have some in the fridge, this is the best that you want to be using. Now of course, if you don't have this kind of broth, you can make it from cubes. Just make sure you're using a good quality kind of broth. A lot of them are filled with a lot of sodium and other preservatives, so look at the packaging before you use what you're using. But anyway, you want some kind of stock broth type of deal. And get that ready. While the broth is heating, prepare your garlic and onions. Now I like to use my Cuisinart food processor because it just makes everything much quicker. So I chop my garlic fine in the food processor using this quick blade. And then I've decided to slice my onions because that's the blade that comes with this food processor. I'm only able to slice my onions to a certain size, whereas if I were to chop it fine, it will just kind of end up being mushy. So I'm gonna slice mine. But you can chop your onions if you've got a machine that can do that, or just use your hands. And so get the onions and the garlic ready while you're waiting for the rice to soak. Now once you have your onions and your garlic and your broth ready to go, your Rice has soaked and has been rinsed very well. It is time to start making the risotto. So heat up some oil in a pan and then add the onions so that they can start cooking so long. Now after a couple of minutes, once your onions are translucent, you can add in your garlic and also the rice. And stir this up for a minute or so and let it just kind of begin its cooking process. Now here you want to add in some dry white wine. If you don't have white wine, I've also used some mirin, rice cooking wine, anything like that, but just kind of a dry white wine, whatever you have. And cook it in here for a minute or two until it starts to soak up into that rice. And once your wine is soaked up, it's time to start adding the broth. Alright, and now we're about to start the process that takes the longest. I'm going to be adding a cup of stock at a time to this rice and then stirring it in until all of that stock is absorbed, and then I'm going to add another cup and keep on stirring until all of this broth has been soaked up by this rice and made a delicious risotto. Oh, but before I go any further, I'm going to add my mushrooms now so that they cook in with the flavor of the broth and the rice and all the other garlic and goodies we've got in there. As you're stirring in this broth, it is going to cook the rice and then make this creamy deliciousness that risotto is known for. So keep on keeping on. Pretty soon here you will have a delicious risotto. Now a bigger pan for this would probably be a good idea, but I'm just gonna muster on here. It'll be just fine. And I didn't cut my mushrooms any smaller because they're gonna cook kind of into this and decrease in size, but you could cut them smaller depending on what kind of mushrooms you have before adding them into your rice here. Alright, I'm gonna keep stirring and see you in a little bit. Now, not pictured here is me adding salt and pepper, so don't forget to add some salt and pepper for the flavor. Trust me, you'll want to add it here at this stage. Taste your risotto, and then add some more if you feel like you need it later on. Well, this arm is sufficiently worked out and this is totally worth it, but that is what it takes to make a delicious risotto. Now, if you're not going to eat this risotto right away, just leave that last bit of stock in your pot and come back later when you are ready to eat this risotto. Then you can heat it up again with that last bit of broth and then keep stirring and finishing it off so it's ready for you to serve to your guests. However, risotto is best served right away, so you do want to kind of hold back on that last little bit so that the rice doesn't cook too much and then you reheat it and it becomes mush. So that'll take maybe some practice to figure out the balance of that. I have not totally perfected it yet, when to hold back enough and how much will not just overcook when I reheat it. But anyway, worth a try. Best to serve it right away if you can, but if you're not eating your risotto right away, hold back that last bit of broth and then reheat it later when you are gonna serve it to your family or your guests. Well, thank you for hanging out with me while I cook some risotto, and if you found this video helpful, please like it down below and let the others know. It'll really help our channel as well. And you can usually find me here in the kitchen or out in the garden doing some kind of project or packing for a trip heading somewhere. So if you're interested in that, please stick around. We would love to have you be a part of this channel and catch some of our upcoming content. Okay, see ya, bye.